For those who were here last week and were working on the meditation preliminaries, how did things go? Any kind of issues come up or any kind of struggles or anything like that that you want to ask about or talk about how well it went? It's also a good thing. Miguel?
Getting a 10 was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Counting those breaths. Yeah. Yeah, it could be that way for who knows how long, but I mean, the important part is that you just take care of yourself doing that, not beat yourself up about it. Were you able to use any kind of some of the kind of corrections that we had talked about to bring you back onto the object?
Yes and no.
Yeah.
It seems like there's still awareness, but the awareness kind of dims.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. As a matter of fact, that's a lot of what we'll be talking about tonight, is really talking about how it's just amazing that we can even just sit still with our mind for 5 seconds without it flying off to something else. And so, let alone like just even counting to 10. I mean, it seems simple enough, And then, you do it and you just watch where your mind goes. And so we'll get into that actually tonight. We'll talk about some corrections, anecdotes, things you can do to help with that so that you can actually just start building that up. Anybody else? Anything else come up? The ego?
No, I have a hard time visioning, like when you're saying, envision the teacher, see that person's face.
Mm-hmm.
I have a very difficult time creating imagery.
Yeah, visualizing.
Yeah, in my mind. And not just in this, but in other things I've done as well.
Mm-hmm.
When, I've done guided meditation or other types of therapy, do certain types of things where
Mm-hmm.
I'm supposed to envision something. And I have a difficult time putting that picture there.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to want to stay.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a few things we can talk about you can do for that. I mean, one of them is that commonly you can sometimes just reflect on, if it is someone you know personally, you can reflect on memories, just experiences you've had with them, and not necessarily needing to do that in the meditation itself, but kind of outside of it before you really start, just kind of reflecting back on times you've had together, particularly that have been good, not those moments that you were in an argument or something like that. That tends to bring that image fresh into the forefront. So when you go in and you actually start trying to manipulate it in a way, and you're trying to place this person right in front of you, in the room that you're in, that can sometimes more easily facilitate it. And then also there's just doing really practical things, which is, if you have any images, any photographs of the person, just taking a look at those. Because each time you do that, it's planting this impression in your mind. So that when you do go and sit down for just 5 minutes or something, and you start to then really kind of design this whole experience,
The picture thing sounds like a good idea.
yeah, it can come up a little bit easier than that. But it's a very good point. So yeah, for everyone who's new here tonight and who's never been, we'll just kind of go. It's always good because it gives us an opportunity to review, and that becomes very, very necessary. The further and further we get along into this, is to keep going back over, because you're going to hear often in this lineage, we talk about the fondness of all of these really amazing beings for listing things and for numbering things, and seeming to want to drive us insane with all of these lists. And each one of them is very meaningful and serves a greater purpose. And it actually builds up this terrific discipline of being able to review something again and again. So when you run into any kind of issue, particularly in meditation, you can recall it quickly. Because that right there, just when you're just like, wait a minute, where do I go from here? I mean, I remember he mentioned, now I'm supposed to visualize a mountain, and just in that moment, you can use these tools to be able to clarify that. So, in general, hey there. Overall, the whole experience of this meditation series is really about focusing on how what we choose to focus our minds on affects directly how we experience our world. So that's the place that we're starting with. So for us in this particular series that we're going through, we're choosing to focus on someone. And we're labeling that person a teacher. And it's primarily because this teacher is someone that has virtuous qualities, lives the type of life that we would like to live. And so by taking and focusing our minds on that person and bringing to mind their qualities, then the result of doing that can only be to then infuse our mind and actually subsequently our world with those qualities, so that you not only start to see it in yourself, but you start seeing it in others. And then you start seeing it, then it just starts to cover your entire experience of what your life is. So that's the whole reason we do that, because this is something that in this tradition, which is called single-pointed concentration, which exists in really most major worldviews, there is this tremendous power to be able to single-pointedly focus your mind on an object. But then, the teachings that we really use for that is that, okay, well, what else can you do with that? How can you make that more powerful? And so we say, okay, well, we're going to focus on this person. And who that person is someone who can teach us something useful, meaningful, that can actually improve our life. And so there is this kind of almost what we like to call like this virtuous loop that you get going. Even though you're sitting there and being like, well, I'm just visualizing this person, as you were saying, and even especially when you have difficulties doing that, that's what makes this practice even better to work with. Because when you're able to sit, in a room alone for just a few moments and focus on the goodness of a particular person's heart and the way they treat others and so forth, then you can see how you can just build upon that. And you can take it out of that room where you're sitting with your eyes closed, and you can take it on the job, you can take it into your relationship, you can take it wherever you go. And then that's how you're just changing your entire world. So that's the beautiful kind of ascension that we're building here with this. At one point, the teacher who's given us this series, his name is Geshe Michael Roach, and he often compares this practice to being single-pointed concentration to being like a microscope. And what I really like about that, what I find useful about it, is that when we're looking through a microscope, it's, in the most simple way, it's because we want to see something larger. We want to see something greater. And that word greater is really has a lot of juice in it, because it means not only in terms of size and scale, but something that is even more significant. And so you get kind of two faculties going on at that time, which is that you literally are expanding your power of perception and focus, and at the same time you're seeing something at a much, much more subtle and deep way. And that can prove to do a lot of good things for you, and especially for anyone else you might know. If this is something that you choose to share with others. At one point last week, it was really great because we got into a discussion about our egos, and how much fun they can provide us with in this life, in terms of it seems like all the trouble they get us into and all of the ways that they seem to prevent us from doing what we really want to do. And I think it's very important really to keep going over this concept about what the ego seems to be like, because there were a couple of questions that kept coming up about it afterwards. One aspect to it is that, when we think of another person, when we think of a concept that seems to be separate from ourselves, which is what we're talking about in this type of visualization meditation, where we're going to be focusing on a teacher. So it seems as though we're thinking about this other person, we're visualizing this other person. So that when we do that, we tend to think that there's something that is external, and naturally the thought flows from there that if there's something that's external to me, then there must be something internal. And that if there's something there, there must be something here. So if there's a there, there's a here. And so that here, really when it breaks down to it, is what we call kind of the illusion of the ego. That's one of the ways that when we do that, just that mere thought of thinking, well, there's that person, then we actually are failing to stop creating the illusion of our own ego. And that's happening at a very subtle level. Usually we're not even aware of that. It's just a matter of we're sitting there and I see this person and I see Lily right here, and so I'm here, and so she must be there. And right there, I'm immediately saying I'm here because I see her there. And that's exactly what this is about going into, is being able to help to, in many ways, unhinge that kind of attachment we have to that way of thinking. And even though this meditation process will seem relatively simple, especially tonight, the one that we'll get into, which is different from what we did last week, and will be the one that we'll really be doing over the next few weeks. It's got a very beautiful, simple, peaceful structure to it. But at the core of it is very much, we'll start breaking that down. It will start potentially giving you some thoughts as to like, well, wait a minute, where is this ego? Where is that really coming from? So that is very much an important aspect of what we're going to be doing with this whole series. The other aspect we talked about, very fundamental, is certainly about our posture, and we have a very basic 8-point posture that we like to get the body into so that we can actually achieve the stillness that we're trying to do mentally. So just the same way that we'll be using the ego to try to visualize this external virtuous being that we're going to call a teacher, the same way we're going to try to use the body to help still us as well. And that's something that I know even for myself, after meditating for some time, I can get lax about that. I can just get lax about it. It's like, all right, well, I'm sitting comfortably and so forth, but then the other thing with like keeping my chin nice and even and my shoulders and so forth. And then somewhere down the road, in the middle of the meditation, I'll notice that, my breath is getting kind of short, and then I'll notice that actually my shoulders are rolled in, and just something as simple as that can knock you right off the meditation. And then it's like, and thankfully, we've got these corrections we can go back to and just say, all right, let me, roll my shoulders back, whatever that particular point where you just make a slight adjustment, and then you're able to keep moving through. So we'll actually review those just in a moment, because the last thing that was equally important and is part of that 8-point posture is the breath. And we had talked about how one of the amazing aspects of our breath is that it can only be now. It can only exist as you're breathing, in the moment. And that, at least most of us last week had no idea of a past breath or a future breath or something like that. But those of you who knew, if you know something like that, certainly speak up. But for most of us, we were saying, this is why we're choosing to work with the breath, because it is this perfect expression of now. And it's just as simple as that. It's just as simple as that. So you know, that's one of the things that, like, for instance, when you're struggling with the visualization of being able to go back to your breath, because that brings you into the present, and that's always where you want to be aware of your mind being, is in the present. Because if you're there, then you can actually sit with yourself and realize, like, okay, things are all right. You know, there's no major problem here. Even though I don't have the visualization, I'm here with my breath, I'm breathing, must mean I'm alive somewhat, you know, and that's just fine. You know, I'll take that. And sometimes that's just enough. You know, like Miguel said, I mean, sometimes when you're just trying to count to 10 and it's not happening, you'll take that. You'll take that. And that's what's also kind of working that most basic level, basic level of concentration, of single-pointed fixation just on your breath. So, kind of a good way we can just review the 8 points of the posture and also the breath is actually to do it meditatively. So we'll just do a little meditation on that. So we'll start off with, you know, those of you who know, assume your position. And, you know, the first thing we always talk about is that your seat, you know. So, you know, if you're in a chair, it's preferable to get towards the front of the chair and not using the back, and keep both feet flat on the ground. And you can, you know, this is really about placing your hands and arms wherever it's most comfortable for you, you know, depending on your arm length. You know, for some, it might be more comfortable for you to place your hands in your lap. If you do that, you can place the right hand on top of the left. And, you know, depending if you have a previous practice of something, you can bring the thumbs together or not. You can just have them sitting there very, very calmly. Otherwise, you can rest them on your thighs, whatever feels just very natural and comfortable for you. So once you feel like you've got a comfortable seat, then go ahead and close your eyes. And for those who do have a previous practice of having their eyes somewhat open, just make sure that you have a nice solid gaze in front of you, that there's no pattern or anything like that, because that can be easily distracting. And you want to sit up straight as possible. And sometimes what's very helpful for that is to push down with your butt if you need to. And then also seeing a string right at the top of your head, right at the crown of your head, and just imagine someone you love gently pulling up on that string, just enough to give you that little bit of straightening that you need. And then roll your shoulders back once. Make sure they're not tilted one lower than the other. Make them nice and even. Next, check your head. You want to make sure it's not tilted too far up or too far down. So you drop the chin a little bit if you need to, but not too much, because you could start to click your nervous system into thinking it's falling asleep. So make sure it's nice and level. Let your teeth and lips stay in their natural loose position with your mouth closed. And leave your tongue in its natural position up against your palate, right behind your two front teeth. Now start to watch your breath. So inhale and exhale through your nose. Nice and even. Remember that the breath clears away the divide between the world outside of your body and the world inside of you. Just stay with your breath. At the top or bottom of the openings to your nose, post a little lookout or guardian. And watch the breath come and go. Notice how the breath is cool as it enters and warm as it leaves. Just the breath. One thing. That's meditation. One thing. You're now practicing a perfect way to be with your breath. Stay there. Start to relax your focus and open your eyes when you're ready. That's the beauty of, and almost I'd say the grace of meditation is that it is just that, one thing. And through one thing, everything can be changed. And don't try to, or I shouldn't say try, but don't feel that you need to make it ever any more than that. Because sometimes we, especially if you've had whatever that's brought you here to this center, to engage in this kind of practice, is you must have a pretty good head on your shoulders. You must be a pretty smart person, because not everyone just thinks of this to spend their Thursday night doing this. If it was the case, there'd be a lot of people doing that, and there really wouldn't be no Thursday night TV. It just wouldn't exist. So yeah, just keep going back to that. Meditation is about keeping my mind on one thing, and one thing only, in one place, and one place only. And that will go a long way. It'll go a very long way. In fact, it'll go the whole way. Which is exactly what we're going to get into now, the whole way, this whole series. This book here, which is all the answers are in this single book. This is called Liberation in Our Hands, or as we like to call it, Liberation Thrust into the Palm of Your Hands. And it's the third book in a series of 3 by a man of the name of Pabonka Rinpoche. And he is, it's always great to get into the lineage. Because we're all very focused on the fact of the authenticity of these teachings and where they come from, and how well they've been investigated. This particular man who wrote this came from, he did a series of teachings in Tibet, I believe it was around 1921, for about 3 weeks, around 24 days. And he is he is the heart teacher of one of our lineage lamas, Kin Rinpoche, who is, hopefully you know the guy at the top there, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. Beneath him is Kin Rinpoche. So his heart teacher was Pabonka Rinpoche, who gave these teachings, and then they were translated into these 3 books. And really what these 3 books are about is what we call the Lam Rim, which is the steps on the path to enlightenment. And it's just that. It is literally that you follow these steps and you will realize an enlightened state of mind. And I say that very simply, knowing full well that it often doesn't play out that simply. That's me speaking personally. I mean, obviously I don't know your minds, so some of you might just be here, saying yeah, it's actually quite simple, Brian, you'll get there, just keep with it, and thank you for being here, if that's the case. Yeah, he gave this incredible series of teachings, and thankfully it has been handed down through all the various lamas, in our tradition. And it really is that. It really is just like a manual. I mean, it's like, for some people that kind of works. Like, all right, just give me a book on how I can just kind of end all suffering forever for everyone. There's a book on that, give me that book. And, and so through these 3, this being the 3rd one, that's a possibility. You could potentially use it for that. It's truly believed by many of us, and I think it's not too far a stretch to say that there are certain realizations that all of us need to have in order to realize what enlightenment really is, however we might define that. And one of them is something that all of us can agree on, is impermanence. And the most common manifestation of impermanence in our lives is death. And that is something that we can realize in terms of the death of someone close to us, the death of a friend, of a relative. And that's essential to be able to have that realization about the journey to enlightenment. Because that is one of the utmost pillars is the impermanence of this life, the fact of our mortality. And it really, it's amazing to me actually when I think about some of the people that I've known to a certain point in my life, maybe, when I was in my mid-20s or something, who really had not personally experienced that. And maybe you know people like this as well. They really hadn't had anyone close to them die and so forth. And it's quite possible that someone could have the kind of causes for the type of life that they might get fairly well on into their years and not be close to anyone that has died. And the thing about that becomes part of a struggle for an individual such as that is that it becomes a struggle for them to, in a way, spiritually grow. Because if you have any belief in whatever is spiritual to you, whatever you consider to be spiritual, then impermanence is right within that. Impermanence lives within that realm. That's usually where if it's your belief system that you don't really believe in a God or you do believe in a God, usually those roads can converge right there. Is to say, well, are you going to die? Am I going to die? I believe that's how it works out. That seems to be the common deal here. So it's right in that place that they place within the steps to enlightenment a very firm and fixed understanding of that and in what to do with it. And that's certainly what the practice of meditation can start to unseat, is our concept, is our understanding of death, of impermanence in the most grand scale. This beautifully, the steps of the Lam Rim, it takes us through the experiences of what they talk about to enlightenment in this kind of logical, compassionate way. This is one of the things that's so amazing about Tibetan Buddhism is that they are just so down with logic. Maybe you've seen this with His Holiness. When he came in to give these teachings, at UCLA and USC and so forth recently, was at UCLA, I believe it was to get together with neuroscientists and really just throw down yet again, how are things working? How is this world working? How are literally the leading neuroscientists in the world, how do they think it's working? And so I just love it that this guy comes in, he's like, yeah, I would like to sit at the table and discuss that with them. And so that kind of wisdom is in this book, and it's in the Steps of the Path. And so you not only have the wisdom side of it, but it's also given in this really beautiful, loving way. And so it doesn't feel so, for some of us, I grew up strongly Catholic. It doesn't feel, and this is not the experience of all Catholics, it's just for me, sometimes because of the dogma, that derailed me. There were moments that, where it felt, I get so caught up in the dogma of how things and the thinking that needed to be involved that I would just kind of let go of it. And this particular path can be something that has that level of logic, but it's also something you feel. You feel it in your heart, and you can feel it in your gut, which is essential to the whole practice of meditation. Now, what's really cool about this, speaking of mortality and death and impermanence, is the fact of, anybody see that movie When Harry Met Sally? You remember when, I love that bit where Billy Crystal talks about, he says, yeah, I start at the end of the book because I might die before I get to the end of it, and, you see him in bed and he's he actually kind of, he's like, no, anyway, let me go right here. Well, that's basically what we're doing. So there's 3 of these, and we're starting here. And that's not because, that we're so fixed on the fact that we're going to die and everybody's going to die or something like that. It's actually to do because in the Lam Rim, in the steps on the path to enlightenment, when you get near the end, when you're almost there to ending suffering forever for everyone, there is a lot of meditation involved. You're pretty much what they would say, you're living almost in a state of meditation, that you're just constantly in a meditative state of mind. So what's wonderful about this practice is that we're going to start there. We're going to start there with honing the power of our concentration and meditation, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take it and we're going to telescope that in on something that can then actually completely beautify our mind so that it could potentially end us ever having a suffering thought, an afflicted thought, a negative thought about ourselves, anyone, or anything. So we start at the end, and you could easily ask, okay, well, what are other reasons for that? And there is something that you will hear quite often, if you keep coming back here or for any other classes, that you might keep hearing this word emptiness. And that's really what this practice of meditation is going to be honed in on. And right now we're calling it the teacher. And what that teacher and what your mind and all of our minds and everything is that it consists of what we would say is emptiness. Which another way of labeling that or referring to that would be potential, availability, possibility. Sometimes that can feel, I don't know, just in some ways kind of feels more human in a way. If you were to sit there and say, all right, well, I could see focusing on potential, the potential of everything, the potential that exists in everyone, the potential that exists in this room right now for what could happen, the potential that exists in the process of meditation. So that could be something you could use it in that way versus saying emptiness. Because ultimately what that really is the absence of what we think is going on. That's almost kind of the flip side of potential. Is that, if you think of potential almost as a fullness, that there's a fullness there that can become something. If you do something that, you plan a surprise party, a surprise birthday party or something like that. And so one would say, well, it's full of potential for that person to walk in and just fully freak out and have a great time, be totally surprised in the best way possible. But as we all know, if you've ever thrown a surprise party or been at one, it can go like a totally another direction. Like a person can freak out in a totally negative way. It could, the thing could bust up. Someone who you invited was supposed to get there by 8 o'clock. They actually show up right when the person's walking in the door and completely breaks this. I mean, all these things can go wrong with that. And so what we would say then about the emptiness or the absence of that is that it's the absence of what we thought could have happened with this surprise party. That it was going to definitely be this like wonderful occasion. They were totally going to be surprised. So that is where there is the absence of what we think is going to happen ends up happening. So it's we'll go gently with this because it's something that is core to what we'll be doing with the meditation, but at the same time, it's also something that you don't want to try to force my mind. I must get this. What the hell is he talking about with emptiness? It makes no sense to me. Just like your breath, just stay with it, and as we go through it, the process will reveal itself to you exactly how it needs to be revealed to you, and that's something you can trust. I mean, it's the only way it actually can happen. So this whole journey to enlightenment, and by the way, you know, when we say enlightenment, please define that however you wish, whatever that means to you. You know, if it means that you're just simply like, you know, hey, the life gets pretty good, so be it, you know. And if you were to do it on that level, just add to that, so life gets pretty good for not only me, but everybody else as well. You know, just add, you know, add that bookend onto it, because that's we need you to, quite honestly. You know, there's plenty of us out here, seemingly out here, who you know, we need that kind of help. So as we progress along this journey, we're going to go through what are considered to be the 9 stages of meditation, and it takes people like this man right here, whose name is Jetson Kappa, and he's the founder, actually, of our lineage, of the Gelugpa lineage, and he wrote another book very similar to this, which is known as the Great Book on the Steps of the Path. He even had greater ideas of how to get there. So one of the things that Pabonka Rinpoche refers to is how he broke down these 9 stages of meditation. And like I said, you know, at first, I know when I came to this, I was thinking like, you know, like, well, all right, I don't know if I really need that much structure with all this. You know, I mean, you know, I can sit here and, you know, work with my breath and maybe work with a very simple visualization. But really, what you'll soon discover is that as you start to go deeper and you start to get more clear and it starts to get more subtle, all of these, you know, amazing beings have spent time with it to see the ways in which to keep you on that track, so that you don't lose it, because it's so easy to lose it. It's so easy to lose the desire to even want to meditate, let alone to when you actually start to feel like you're getting some traction in your meditation. So that it's really a blessing that they bothered to take the time to write it down, to write these insights down, and that, you know, we have this incredible experience, you know, living in America, that there were these men and women who have come over here that also have translated it and put it down for us in these kind of very simple, straightforward terms. Yeah, so now is when we can kind of get Indy Jones with this. Yes. Lily, maybe you can help me with this. Yeah, let's put it on the sides. Yeah, so does that fit? No? Oh, I wonder if we can kind of... Over here. No. Don't worry, everybody's going to be getting a copy of this. Yeah, you want to grab some tape in there? Yeah. Yeah. We'll get this put up here, but I'll hold it for the moment. So, yeah. So sometimes this is referred to as the chart, or like, you know, in a more kind of 80s thing, it'd be like a poster. I look at it and think, though, that it's almost almost like a secret treasure map, and it really is that. It's actually the map to enlightenment. I also like to think of it as like a blueprint to bliss. Also works for me, might work for you. And if you stick with this series, we'll get all the way up to here. Yeah, yeah, right? We'll get up to here where this guy is flying around. I mean, that'll pretty much be you. Yeah, wonderfully so. I wonder if that'll, that's fine like that. Cool. Now I'll give you these. You can hand these out to beautiful people. They're kind of they're separated like that. Because I wanted to keep them loose because you'll kind of be flipping back and forth between them. It's like throw me the whip, I throw you the idol. I mean, that's kind of, you just have to kind of keep looking at it and just being like, okay, wait a minute. So what's that say down there? What's that symbol? What's he pointing to there? And it's amazing. It's amazing. And yes, and all of the writing on it is Tibetan. So for those of you who read Tibetan, easy. You will have a lot easier time getting through what they're pointing to. But like all great secret treasure maps, there's that aspect of mystery in it that will only be revealed to you in meditation. So right at the bottom, I wonder, does this thing work? Ooh, yeah. So that guy right there at the bottom, yeah, that's you in another form. And that's where the journey begins. That's where it starts tonight. And what you'll see when you look very closely is that down right beneath his, kind of his left foot there actually is the numeral 1 right next to the. Does everybody see that? Yeah. And that really is that's referring to the first meditation level, or the first stage. But before we launch off into this, they say that before you even get to the first level of meditation, we all need to receive teachings on how to meditate, and the truth of the matter is the power of listening is how you learn how to start to meditate. And you'll be able to understand that more and more. Maybe you already get that. Maybe you already get that connection. But your ability to listen is what can directly inform the power of your meditation. So, for some of us, we're like barely even on the map yet. It's like we're kind of looking at the map. It's just like, yeah, well, that's interesting. I hope to get there. And one of the things that I love about, let's just say you there at the start of it is that you just open like this, like both arms open, looking ahead at this. It's like, yes, I am ready. Let's do this. I want to get all the way to the end. It's like, it's such a beautiful physical gesture of openness and desire. Having your arms up like that, and what he's got in the left hand is this chain with a hook, and the right hand has a hook in it as well. And we'll get into the reasons for that. But this person is prepared. They've got the desire. They want to go. They want to go to this place with their mind that can simply end their suffering forever, and everyone else. And that goes beyond the title of this class of everyday peace. It's something. It's one thing to have peace every day, which is a great thing. But yeah, this is a person who's looking to be totally blissed out, 24/7 all the time. But there's a journey. There's a journey to that, and that's exactly what the Lam Rim is all about. But this first meditation stage, this first level, is fundamentally just choosing to meditate, to come here tonight, and hopefully tomorrow morning to actually sit down, whether you sit on the floor, on a cushion, on your chair, on the sofa, or whatever, but just that choice to sit down and meditate. That's literally what what the first level really is about, because as maybe if you've ever meditated before, or if you haven't ever, you will see that maybe just when we did with the breath meditation is that your mind's going all over the place. And there's thoughts coming here and there, and so forth. And that's pretty much what that first level is about, is the fact of that you will be the majority of the time off your meditative object, far more than you'll be on it. And, that's perfectly fine. Because it just gives you that keen sense of like, okay, so this is where I'm starting. This is where I am, and that's exactly what you want to be aware of. And when we're discussing about the fact that you need to receive teachings on how to meditate and so forth, the reason that they say that receiving those teachings precipitates the fact of you even getting to the first level is because most of us need to be convinced that there really is something good about doing this meditation thing to begin with. And it's not, and for something that might be just more than one thing. Like, that there's more than just, well, yeah, I'll be able to chill out more easily, not get so upset. That might not be good enough for some of us. We might need like 30 more reasons to do that. So we kind of set up this whole conceit of us coming here, and we're going to talk about all these reasons why to do it and so forth, why to meditate, why to spend just 5 minutes of your day doing that. But the truth of the matter is ultimately, I will convince you of nothing. That's not me. You're the one that will convince yourself. You'll convince your own mind as to why to sit down again. What's the worth of doing that? And in many ways, thank goodness for that. Thank goodness for the awareness that it's really not about this dude sitting up here, with all these papers and these crazy maps and everything else, but it's the fact of, I'm sitting down and I realize why to do this. Why to do this? And that realization, in some ways, that's what that seed that you plant in your mind turns into, is that at the top. Because that's the one you'll just keep watering. You're going to just keep nourishing that, is the fact of like, yes, I do realize. And it started with this, and then when I got around the second bend, I realized about these 20 other reasons to do it. And about the third bend, it's just like, please. It's the most important thing I do each day. And you'll just see how it continues to accumulate. Yeah, Geshe Michael, who, as I said, formulated this whole new series, really says that you've reached the first level when within the 5 minutes of meditation, your teacher comes to your mind clearly and vibrantly once. once. That's it. That they are crystal clear. Whoever that person is you've chosen to meditate, place your mind on in that whatever 5 minutes, in those 5 minutes, they're there once. And I know when I first heard that, I was like, really? Just once? You know, come on, Geshe. I mean, that seems pretty simple. Just work with that and see what happens. That'll be that's what you can track off. If you know, it's like if you get there, then great, bam, you're on the map. And you're like, all right, let's do this, I'm ready to go. I saw him or her once, very clearly, vibrantly. Whew, thank goodness, you know. And now let's get into it. So if we've done that, and this is you here at the start of the path, as I said, he or she has the chain with the the chain with the hook in his left hand and the hook in the right. And you know, part of this is because back in olden times, when they were putting this all together, and maybe even actually today, I don't know, I haven't been to India recently, but that was often how they needed to use these kind of implements to, you know, tame animals, particularly elephants, monkey. And in this case, what he's looking at is the elephant, which is your mind. And the monkey is distraction. And so you're going to use these implements in your hands to tame this element, tame your mind. And in the left hand, that chain with the hook, what that really represents is what we call recollection, which is that you're going to use that chain with that hook to get around that elephant, which is your mind, and bring it back to the object. You're going to use it literally to bring it back in. So you're going to bring your focus whenever it starts to wander off and so forth. That's when you literally use that. Sometimes the visualization is great. Just seeing like your arm kind of coming up and bringing it like, wait a minute, mind right here on this person that I've chosen to focus on for just a few minutes. You know, so we call it recollection. You can call it remembering, but it is an essential tool, because you'll see how much you'll need to use it. You know, you'll see how much that elephant starts rampaging off to like, what am I going to have for dinner? I can't believe she said that to me. What the hell am I doing here? Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. Our mind really can be filled with these problems often. And the recollection is a very powerful tool with that. So in the spirit of problems, Tsongkhapa, His Holiness, Pabonka Rinpoche, Kin Rinpoche, they and many other great minds were able to pull together essentially 5 problems. That really there are 5 problems that we're going to be dealing with all along this magical journey in trying to meditate and get to the place of total enlightenment. The first is certainly one that I'm sure we can all relate to on some level, which is laziness. And the Tibetan word for this is lelo, which don't you just feel that? Like I just said that, I'm like, lay low. Like I just want to just lay right down. And it is that feeling of just not wanting to meditate, you know. And you have literally 5 billion good reasons not to, or one, which is that I just don't feel like it. I don't want to, and that's a biggie. I mean, that's a biggie. Fortunately, we have what are referred to as corrections or antidotes for this to help us with that. We don't feel like it. and we don't want to. And the first one, the first correction for when you're feeling this kind of laziness, this lay low, is referred to in Sanskrit as shraddha, which is faith. And the way that really translates for us is a way in which we actually discussed last week, which is that you think of the benefits to doing this. You think of all the reasons why to do this. That is exactly what can build up your faith, is by going back over that. Yeah. Geshe Michael, used this wonderful approach to when wanting to think about what are all the reasons why to meditate, what are all the benefits. And he talked about thinking back to the first time that you fell in love in high school. And I love that he chose high school in particular, and not college or in your 20s, or maybe when you were 10 years old or something like that. I think there's this wonderful combination of like the physical and the mental insanity of being a teenager, since we are all just so physically and mentally insane during that time. Our bodies are exploding, and our mind is actually right in tandem with that. So when we have this moment of all this explosion going on within our bodies and mind, and then we actually then track it into one person, and it's just like there is nothing else, no classes, no whatever else, and I was one of these, kind of ridiculously over-involved teenagers of being on the soccer team and being in the drama guild and on the spirit club and the social committee and this and that and the newspaper team and all this stuff. And so, but yeah, I'll never forget Celia Castellano. Like the first moment that I was like, wow. And then that passed, that feeling, but I realized then it was just like someone's talking to me, I was like, what did you say? I'm sorry, but who is that? That's, in that moment, or at least I'll speak for myself, I didn't really catalog in that moment all the things that I loved about her, as I was experiencing that. But now in retrospect, now I can look back and think like, well, yeah, man, I love the way she walked in the room, I love the way she held herself, I love the way she styled her hair. I love the way she smelled even. Like that, that I think I actually was conscious of. I think I did catalog that when I was a teenager. But it's just doing just that. The same thing with meditation. And you'll see how in doing that kind of experience of thinking about that first person you fell in love with in high school, that's the same kind of feeling that you want to be conjuring in the meditation with this teacher, with this person that you've chosen to meditate on, is that you are just fully and completely fixed on them. There is nothing else. Nothing else matters. And what's so beautiful about that is the fact of, as opposed to 16, I will openly admit I did not have the most virtuous things in mind when focusing on her. But now, and with this practice, you will do just that. You're going to say, well, it is all of these incredible qualities of this person and the way they live and the goodness of them and how well they treat others. All of these wonderful aspects. It's like, oh, that's what I'm going to be fully focused on. It's very important to see how are the other ways that we do this, in our everyday lives. And I don't know about you, but like for instance, I brought up Raiders of the Lost Ark. Now, I do this with my favorite movies that I continue to watch over and over again, which because, during the experience of watching them is that, I love it so much that I'm completely fixed on what's happening in this film, in the experience of it, that, I'm not thinking about anything else. And then what happens is that I start to think about like, God, man, I loved how well it was written. I loved how it was shot. I loved the relationship between him and her. That was amazing what happened in that one particular scene. You just immediately start cataloging like all the reasons of what you love about this particular film. I did this recently, like I had only seen like the last third of like Shawshank Redemption or something like that. And I'm still crying at the end on the beach again. For like whatever, the 7th time, and so forth. And what's happening in that moment as well is that you're also picking up on nuances that you never noticed before. So that's what kept me watching again. Was like, oh man, I didn't even realize what that guy was doing in the scene as well. That was really wonderful work he was doing there. So it's good to kind of use those kinds of examples in your life when you think about that, or when the next time you're watching a movie like this that you love and totally into, of like, think about that, with your meditation object. Think about that person, like, what is it about? What else is it about them? What is it about them? Why do I keep choosing them to focus on? Last week it was wonderful because of everybody here in the room. We came up with a lot of the reasons and the benefits of doing this, of meditating, and I want to go back over some of them because it's good to continue to hear these to keep them fresh in your mind. Some of the things that came up, we were talking about that they could gain a more clear understanding of how the world works, how things are really working in this life. Simple things that it calms you, it sharpens your mind, it sharpens your focus. People are feeling much more sharp on the job, very much less distraction. This was a beautiful one that someone had mentioned, which was that it inspires them to want to share it with others, and not in any kind of preaching, proselytizing way, but I mean, I've seen it happen time and time again with people, here or something that like, well, how is it that you ended up coming to Mahasuka or whatever? Well, I was talking to this guy, Cliff Spencer, at this party. And, we're talking about, and, I just really dug his whole energy. He just has really sweet energy about him and so forth. And, and then he shared with that person, you want to know what I do is I meditate, and just like that small little seed that you could plant, in your own mind of doing that for someone, especially if you continue to want to keep doing it, incredible where that can go. It certainly makes the power of the good things that you do even stronger, because you're more aware of them as you're doing it. Like, is the fact of like, oh yeah, that that's one of those virtuous loop moments, is that you see like, okay, doing this leads to this, that was a good thing, it feels good, I want to do more of that. One of my personal favorites is that it deepens your ability to enjoy the moment more. I mean, that one still just keeps feeding me. Of just those split seconds where there's whatever is going on. And that I feel great, everything's great, everything looks great, the weather is great, and just having this moment of like, I'm really enjoying this, and I think it has something to do with this practice. That really gives tremendous power. You're empowering your own mind in those moments when you have such a thought as that. So that just doesn't seem to ever empty out for me. Well, and the kind of the big coup d'état, as we like to say, when we were talking about emptiness earlier, it is the only way that you can come to understand emptiness completely is through meditation. This is how it's handed down to us, is that the only way that you will be able to completely understand the ultimate nature of reality, what's really going on, is to be able to perceive this potential directly. And they say that this can only happen in single-pointed meditation. So that's the high level, that's the high level benefit that is a reason why it is existing further along in this map, because it's something that can only really start to take root in you as you more and more get a sense of what that really means. But it's a good one to reiterate again and again. And this was very beautiful, actually, that Geshe Michael had spoken about in his teachings, which is that when you're doing this every morning, you're actually centered or focused on this tiny space within your heart chakra, if that's something that you believe in, this place of where almost where the entire world, as you perceive it, is flowing from. So and we say this when you're doing this every morning, if you meditate each morning on this particular place within your mind or in your heart, that everything that you're perceiving is flowing from, then that is going to inform the rest of your day. That you began by focusing on what is really the core of your compassion and your wisdom. I mean, that's real. In many ways, that's how you could refer to the heart chakra, as that way, is that it is the heart or the core of your compassion and wisdom. And so just to do that at the beginning of each day for 5 minutes, then that's something that's going to continue to just flow through the rest of your day. And you'll know that because you'll think about that again as another reason. Someone, I think, mentioned this last week as well, which is that it's a good way to spend time where it's really actually difficult for you to commit a bad deed, like to do something bad, which I loved that, like in a very practical sense, like was like, all right, it's like a time where I actually can't screw up, and really just kind of, those 5 minutes, everything's pretty much good. And you can have some bad thoughts come up during that time or whatever, but it is it's a good practical one to use. And I think this is almost in a way one of the most profound reasons, which is that you learn to watch the state of your mind. And that's a very simple statement, but it's relatively easy for us to be aware of our feelings. We're pretty aware of when we're pissed off, or when we're feeling great. Or even in those moments where we feel kind of blasé or something like that, like kind of apathetic. So it's another thing to be aware of your consciousness. And that's exactly what meditation is doing. I mean, you are in union with your consciousness during that time period. And that's profound. Just think about that. That's just something to think about. We'll finish up just these other few corrections, and we'll take a break. So that's really the correction, the antidote to when you just don't feel like it, and you're just feeling lazy, is to think about all these reasons. The second correction is really simple, and that is that you want to because you understand all the reasons why. I mean, that's the logic right there. You just go from it's like, I'm feeling lazy. Why in the hell am I doing this? Okay, I've thought about that. Now it's like the second way, it's like, okay, maybe that's not entirely getting you back on your object. So you're like bringing that hook in, and you think to yourself, it's because, the fact is, I do want to. I remember that I wanted to. I went there on Thursday night. I must have wanted to. I wasn't going there to really sit in pain and agony for an hour and a half. So that it's exactly, well, it's kind of a good way to go back to that first person you fell in love with in high school. When you go back to those moments of thinking about that, and you can obviously make it even, maybe you've fallen in love recently, or maybe you're still in love with someone that you've been with for years, is that the fact that you want to be with them, you want to love them, and that's the inspiration for you to do something. That's the inspiration for you to make your move, 9 times out of 10. I mean, in high school, it was like, that was inspiration for me to slip a note into Celia's locker. And I think, then I think I talked to one of her good friends, like, hey, could you put in a good word for me, next time at lunch, and so forth. And, but each one of those times is the fact, like, I was driven by my desire, for her, quite honestly. I mean, that's what it was. And so it's that same, you can do very easily the same thing with meditation, is to think about, I want to do this, and these are all the reasons why. And then the third, you need another reason to kind of bring you back to the object, because you're having difficulty doing that, is to simply put the effort forth to do it, to actually then do something about it, and that, I think I just used that like the other day, which was, I was definitely going off the object in the meditation, and it was just like, Brian, will you please place your mind back on the object now? And fortunately, Brian did. So it's the same thing. It's so simple, right? Which is to say, all right, do that. Focus on this person, focus on this object. So it keeps coming back to the fact that the desire is what drives you to do something, and when it is driven by all of those reasons of how good this is and what are the benefits of it, then it's like, okay, well, do it. Some ways you could say the third correction is just do it. This Nike. The fourth, fortunately, is that the more you do it mindfully, you get better and better at it. Fortunately. In some ways. I won't say that in all ways. There can be struggles that continue, but you truly do get better at it, both physically and mentally. And it's amazing. I mean, you'll find times that it's like, oh my God, my back started bothering me, always like within like 5 seconds into it. 3 weeks from now, you might not even be noticing that, That's one physical aspect right there. And that can be huge for some people, especially if you're someone that, has chronic back pain or something like that. It's like, well, actually for those 5-10 minutes, my back wasn't bothering me, or it doesn't bother me anymore. And they say this, and it is very, very, very true, that at the more advanced level, as you get, really where it really is the center of your life, getting this meditation is that, physically you'll sit down to meditate and you just like click and drop in, and you are right there physically, like your body, and that's just it. It's just a switch. And then mentally is the same thing, which is that you close those eyes and you go deep very quickly. And that is something that, I was really happy to hear that because okay, so that can happen. Good to know. Note to self, non-existent self, that can happen. So it's fortunately that's something that we all can aspire to in that practice, But so those are the four. Those are the four to help with this on the first. So let's take a break. Then we'll come back and do some more meditation. Yes. What?
The birthday boy didn't
Yeah, I
show
know. I
up
was looking
because
for
he got
him.
enlightened on the way.
Hey, man.
Wondrous thing happened on birthdays.
Best All righty. So, yes, the first problem, good old lay low, laziness. Now, there are other problems. As we discussed, there are 5. And we'll just touch on the second one, quickly, and then we'll go into the meditation. The second problem is really described as forgetting the instructions. I love that. It's just as simple as that. And as we all know, we do that quite simply. Either we really kind of forget how the meditation is supposed to progress, we forget aspects of what we've been talking about tonight. What are the corrections we can use when we're in the meditation? Like, what do you say about the thing with the this happens all the time. So it is just as well a major problem. Fortunately, there are corrections for it as well. And in almost the kind of most reduced way, it's completely losing the object altogether. Whatever your meditative object is, you just completely go off that object. And with the teacher, this person that you're using, it seems like difficult that it would be to do that. But if anybody did the meditations over the past week, you'll see how easy it is to just you just do not see them. You're either struggling to visualize them. So there are many reasons why that can be the case. But that's in it kind of its more base form, is that you just completely lose the object. And what this does on the wow, I love using this thing. It makes it even more mysterious. Right here is number 2, and that's really what it refers to, which is why it's pointing to that chain and hook in his left hand, is the recollection. I mean, that's the antidote. So if you forget, you try to remember. And it took 2,500 years for us to be able to put that down on paper and use that as a way to correct that issue. So a subtlety to that, though, is that one of the great enemies of trying to remember something is actually when you change the object that you were meditating on. And that's exactly, of course, what happens when you go off the object. So you can see how, that trump card gets thrown at you. It's like, I've completely lost the object, and I'm totally on some other thing right now. And then you're supposed to what am I I'm trying to recollect in order to come back to my primary object. So you can see how why it is going off that object is something that you want to rein that in as quickly as possible, because that kind of, if you get nice and kind of lax with yourself in that mentally, okay, I'm coming back to him, and I see him here, and something that smells good. What is that in the kitchen? It's so easy. And this is like one of the, we'll have these throughout this whole process. These kind of kind of 007 moves that you can throw in your mind, which is that you make pulling the mind back to the object part of the distraction. So in other words, what distracted you, whatever it is, you use that action of being distracted, you use that to trick the distraction, the act of being distracted in your mind. So in other words, you use it. So it's like, hey, that scent distracted me. I was distracted. It brought me off of the object. I realize I'm off the object right now because I know I want to be on the object. That's why I'm back on the object. And that's really, and the mind might be like, I can't believe, it's just, it's so great. It might create something else to be just like, yes, and doesn't that bird sound really lovely out there? And you can just immediately do it again, bring it right back. So that's how you can use it. You can use the distraction in order to bring it right back onto the object. I'll leave it with that. Yes, that's a good place to stop. So let's get into some meditation. Let's put some of this to work. So please get in physical place that feels good for your body to do this. So once again, find your seat and put your hands in a nice, comfortable place where you can forget about them. Close your eyes. Straighten that spine. Push down with your butt if you need to. Pull up with the string at the top of your head. Roll your shoulders back once. Level them out. Level out your head. Drop the chin if you need to. Let your teeth and lips stay natural and loose, but keep your mouth closed. Leave your tongue right behind your front teeth. And please start to watch your breath. Post your lookout or little guardian at the top or bottom of your nostril. And just watch that breath go in and out. Stay there. One thing, the breath. Let the breath fill your whole mind. Now picture a mountainside. And near the top of it is a beautiful retreat cabin or house that has floor-to-ceiling windows that overlook the surrounding mountains and valley below. Go into the house and sit in one room with those tall windows. This is your favorite room. And it's filled with the golden light of sunset. Golden sunlight is streaming in through the windows and reflected all throughout the room. This is your golden room. It's the type of place you've always wanted. You love it so much you feel like you could stay here forever. Now look out the windows and see soft mountains rising halfway up to the blue sky above. Imagine that your teacher is with you, sitting and facing you with that golden amber light of sunset shining upon you both. Visualization is not just making pictures in your mind. It's bringing a living being into the room with you. Their eyes blinking, chest rising and falling, warmth from their body. Focus on the outline of their face. Just their face. One thing. That's meditation. Your mind is linked to their face. No other object in the world. Just their face. Bid your teacher farewell, and you can slowly open your eyes. What's most important with this meditation, which will be meditation we'll be using, will be nuances that we'll add to it along the way, is that you focus on the quality of it, not the duration. You know, you're not shooting for a specific period of time. You really just want to focus on the quality of your concentration. And if it's not going well, stop and try it again later. And be rigorous with yourself. I mean, don't let your mind off so easily. You know, you're going to still try to rein it back in. Try to keep on that object. But as we all know, and each of us have our varying levels of discipline with this. At a certain point is that you don't want to start habituating yourself to really having a poor meditation, because you're getting to the point where you're building up so much frustration because you're constantly flying off of the object, you know, or you're getting frustrated because you can't visualize that, or that's not too clear, and so forth. And one of the things that some of us that have been doing this a long time do is that we'd stay in there and still kind of keep duking it out And there were some habits that we started building in that, which is where now, in this particular series, you're given the strength to stop that only because you will try that again later. You'll go back to it. Because that's really just about, 5-7 minutes, something like that. And that can seem like a marathon, at certain points. But for the next week, try to do it twice a day. Take 5 minutes, put aside 5 minutes, preferably if you can get one in the morning, and then some other point in the day, and experiment with that. Experiment with doing it in, trying to slip one in the afternoon, which works a lot for some people because they feel very energized at that time. For other people, it's just like, oof, no, my mind is so crazy at that time that the night works better for me. But experiment with it. But try to do it twice a day. And, just put that 5 minutes aside, but you're not beholden to that 5 minutes. What you're beholden to is the quality of the meditation. That's exactly what your focus is going to be on. Geshe Michael talks about that. It's one thing if it's really going terribly, but it's another thing that if it's going well, then actually end the meditation feeling like you would have liked to stay a little bit longer. Because that when you stop while it's good, it's because you want to go back and do it again. That's what we were talking earlier about, that desire. Is that, man, that was good. So it just it leaves that little, that kind of energy gets planted in your mind right there. And it's like, yeah, I look forward to that. The next one, I might do that in 4 hours, and so forth. And it's wonderful. It's wonderful. So, and one of the things I wanted to mention as well that's very, very, very helpful with all of this meditation that we're going to be doing is that if you don't, is to do some form of yoga, wherever you live, if you have that kind of practice or you've ever thought about starting it or something like that, because that really, much of what yoga has to do about is to actually help you meditate better. That's primarily it. We have wonderful teachers here. There's nearly yoga every day of the week, varying times. But it's really good to track that along with this, and you'll start to see how the two start really informing each other. Because you'll literally see that, wow, I can actually sit without so much pain. And somehow it's like, wow, just from doing downward dog, and so forth. And that's really, it's one of the beautiful aspects of the yoga that's offered here as well, is that all of the yoga teachers here really are feeding you and nourishing you with those thoughts during the practice, so that when you leave and you go home and you're doing your golden room meditation, it's like they've also given you all these juicy bits, as to how to be able to sit better and enjoy it, all the more. And last but not least is that please donate whatever you can with happiness to Mahasukha Center. This place is phenomenal, and it is primarily driven simply by what people donate. So whatever worth that this has to you in that sense, and you can give it happily, please do that, because it really is a good thing for you to see your own mind doing such a thing. It's another way of you empowering the meditation, this whole practice for you. Yeah, if it's a buck, it's a buck. But for you to make the connection when you drop a buck in the bowl and you're it's like, yeah, I dug this. I want to, I'm going to try this. Then you know, maybe one day that'll be 1 million, which would be incredible. At that point, you'll probably be up about here in the path, which is a beautiful thing. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Enjoy it. By all means, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to email me. If you don't have my email, come and ask for me, and I'll give it to you.